All right, so this is going to be one of those conversations that is probably fitting in my life since I've got to make these drastic changes in my life now and deal with some health challenges and being somebody that's kind of confused about where that plan actually starts. I think this is where it really helps out for a lot of people because we all get out into nature. We look at that for the representation. But how do we bring that home with us and develop that not only the plan, but the why behind the plan so we can find the motivation to really stay on track.
I love that. And that's what I do. So I'm Aliki Samone. I'm the author of Conquer Your Summit: How to Build a 5-Year Plan and Live Your Best Life. And I also recently just purchased I did not. I published another book called The Summit Method: A 3-Step Strategy for Success in Self, Wealth, and Community. And that's kind of what I talk about is how to take all of us as everyday people, who are just trying to get either to the next thing or a big dream or just kind of figure out how to get rid of all the spiral that I feel like life continues to throw for a lot of us and have somewhat of a structured approach to that, right? I talk about mental tools, planning techniques, and then execution habits. I believe those are the, 3 number 1 steps to actually get somewhere in life. You can't leave out any one of those things. Now, those are very broad, vague statements: mental tools, planning techniques, and execution habits, but you have to have all 3 of those pillars in order to get somewhere. So, where do you want to jump in? What do you want to talk about?
Well, actually, it's kind of funny because a lot of us find ourselves in these positions where we're just thrown into them. That's actually how Project Mindfully Outdoors came about. Was I went through this massive upheaval in my personal life and didn't know what to do with it, and I kind of fumbled my way and found myself there. And then, lo and behold, further down the road, another obstacle comes up where it's like, again, you got to redevelop a plan. So I faced some health challenges recently that have flipped my world upside down, and all of a sudden I've got to do all these different things. And it was like walking out of the hospital. They just kind of told you, hey, this is what it is, figure it out. So going back into nature, which I always do, you look for the inspiration and the ideas, but it's still at this point in my journey with this part of it, it's still kind of like just a bunch of words thrown up on the wall and seeing which ones stick. So how do you talk to me a little bit about going from just throwing things against the wall, hoping they stick, to actually putting tape on them and making them stick on the wall a little bit?
Sure, sure. I love that you mentioned, about nature and going outdoors and, somewhat finding yourself, but, getting that inspiration because in order to get things to stick, in order to put that tape on the wall, you have to first find your mental tools or your mental place where, in your case, you're coming against, this health change and totally having to bring a new mindset or, work through difficult barriers. And those barriers in life, they exist all over the place. I talk a lot to people who maybe they're having career barriers or, financial barriers. They've realized they've got all this debt. They don't know what to do. They kind of close in and it's dark and doomy, or just other types of barriers that come our way in life. And you have to stop and say, okay, what are the mental tools that you're going to leverage when those barriers come up? Because, if I put a piece of scotch tape on the wall for, this plan that I make, it might still fall off, right? If I put some gorilla tape on the wall, like it might stick a lot longer. But the point being that you can make a beautiful plan and you can stick it up on the wall saying, I got this, let's go execute. But wind might come by or some issue comes by and it's going to knock off your plan. So if you don't have those strong mental tools or mindset to fall back on, you will struggle. So I usually talk about things like find your life purpose And that sounds like a really big, huge question, but I call it life purpose statements. And I ask people to do these mind maps where it's like, what are, and a mind map is put a question on the center of a page and then, sprout ideas off of that question. Give yourself 10 minutes, limitless. No one's going to look at this. You can say anything you want. And the questions guide you in ways like, who are people or events or circumstances in your life that have deeply affected you, either in a positive or a negative way, and just start build getting all that out and start seeing how that's maybe driving the way you think and act. What does your ideal life look like? When you're looking at personal growth and financial and career and community, what are all the things that you'd love to ideally see? And personal growth involves travel, education, health and fitness, spirituality, big events, self-care. What's happening for you? And you have to spend the time to kind of give yourself space to come up with all these ideas and then funnel them down and ask yourself why. Like, why was that one thing listed as your ideal thing in life? Why do you want to live on a private island? Why do you want X, Y, and Z? And as you ask these why questions, you funnel down into statements of, I want to be this or do this because X. And you write it on a piece of paper and you put it on your wall with some strong tape. And you see it every day. That's motivation. That's you saying, you know what? I'm getting up every day. I'm changing my routine. I'm doing this because of this. Or I am, working hard and continuing in my career because I want to become this manager of this thing. And it's going to take time for me to do the learning, but I'm doing it because of X. And you see that reminder. And the reminders are there to help you when barriers come up so that when that paper that you asked about and the sticky page or the tape fall down, you have mental tools. And it sounds like for you, you've got nature, right? And I personally love nature. I've got a camper van and I go out in nature all the time. It's definitely my serene place of just purity. So I I get that. And it's having your thing. And if your thing is going out in nature, fantastic. If your thing is you need to write up some statements that you can look at every day and say, that's my why, you got to start there. Got to have mental tools to get yourself through barriers, to get yourself through when the tape falls off the wall. Now, before I say anything about the actual plan itself, I'll pause so I don't talk too much. Anything you want to follow up there before we get to actual techniques to do some of this?
No, I love the fact that you keep bringing up the mental tool part because when I think about, my personal state right now and I look at where I've been without all of those footsteps that led me to today, I don't know that I could really tackle and successfully overcome where I'm finding myself now because it takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of overcoming the adversity. And a big part of that I've discovered when you're trying to frame that into a way to continue to motivate yourself is you got to look at the reality of the situation when you look back and realize that even though people may judge you for what you may have done and this and that, you were making decisions based off of the environment and the vocabulary that you had in the moment. So it gave you the opportunity to practice and strengthen those muscles a little bit. And that I feel like brings you to where I found myself a couple weeks ago, laying in a hospital bed, getting a diagnosis going, man, I got to make a lot of difficult changes in my life now. I know the motivation factors are things get worse if I don't. However, to actually figure out a plan and enact that plan, you feel like time just isn't your friend. It's like all of a sudden I got to have all these results. I got to do this. I got to do that. And it builds the frustration. And that's where I feel like that tape loses its strength. And all those little pieces of paper you put on the wall all fall down so quick.
It's true. It's true. But you practice the abilities to have mindset, positive growth mindset, some mental tools to help you get there. And it's not always going to be easy and magical, right? Just because you went through and did the work of creating these mental tools doesn't mean you're always going to have, the perfect sword for the fight. But if you don't choose to do it, you will, run into a lot more problems, and, you will likely get to some failure. Now, failure is okay. I want to take a moment when it comes to, shouting out a positive growth mindset. Remember, to everyone out there, challenges and failure, or feeling like maybe you missed the mark, those are opportunities for growth and for change. And that's probably the hardest thing to remember, is, learn from some things you can grow. But how do we grow? How do we actually get from right here? We're at the base of the trail, we're reading where we're going, and we want to get to the top of that mountain peak so we can celebrate and break out our lunch and hang out in life. And up the top of that mountain peak is our dreams, our goals. Whether they're big or small, there's still something you've got to put time and energy into to get to. So what I talk about when you get to the planning techniques part of what I do, the actual paper on the wall that we've been talking about, it's breaking up the steps. In any hike, in any climb of a mountain, you don't go from the bottom to the top instantly. You do it by switchbacks. You do it by, changing course or getting to a Y in the road and making some decisions and getting eventually to the end, maybe stopping and taking some breaks. Those are all, metaphors to actually making a plan. So what I do is I have people, again, do the brainstorm. Like, what are all your things that you want to do within personal growth, financial, career, and community? Because we can never forget about community. We actually have to have goals centered around the people we love, family, friends, and the organizations we're a part of. You set those big goals. So we'll put that up here. I call them big goals. And you say, all right, how do I break that up? If I want to, buy a house or run a marathon or become the manager of my organization, those are bigger things. Maybe get a new job in a new industry. Well, they're scary because you don't know how to get from where you are now to there. So you have to break it up. It's that simple. You have to make mini steps. What are the pieces that have to be done in order to get to that point? And if you don't know, because a lot of people are like, yeah, I mean, I get that. That makes sense. But what are those pieces? What are those steps? You find a mentor. Depending on what your goal is, you can find them online. There's social media, there is LinkedIn. If it's like a career-based thing, maybe, it's going and finding a mastermind group to learn something, taking a course at a local community college. It's find somebody who is an expert in that thing or has knowledge in that thing and ask them. I mean, I know we're kind of polarized as a society on AI right now, but if you like AI, you can jump into something like ChatGPT and say, hey, I want to become this or do this. What are the 10 steps that I need to do in order to get that? And it's going to spit out those 10 steps. And that's what the planning techniques are. It's take the time to do the brainstorm and actually determine what the things you want are. Leverage a mentor, someone who knows something about the given subject, or go online and do some research. What are the steps to get there? And back yourself up to today. That big goal might be a 3, 5, X year long endeavor. And that could be hard. Like, I get up every day and I'm like, oh man, like, I want to do this thing, but it's taking me 5 years. Yeah, we're going to lose steam. So the only way to stay on track and to have those papers on the wall helping us keep moving forward is if we got to break it back down today. I got to know, what do I need to do this quarter? What do I need to do this month? That's aligned with that bigger vision, but it's something that I can sink my teeth in and be like, yeah, like, I'm going to run a marathon and I don't do any running. Let's say I should go buy running shoes. Okay, that's simple. All you had to do this month was go buy running shoes, right? And when you're thinking about the bigger thing, it's just so overwhelming. You can't even get to a point where you're like, all I had to do is go buy running shoes. All right, now next month I'll do this task. So I like to just really, talk about breaking up the task, leveraging experts or, the internet research, and taking that bigger dreamer goal and bringing it down to today. What are the next things you need to just start doing that all lead toward the bigger item? And in my book, I talk about, very specific ways to do this. And I've got templates online to kind of help people with that process. But in this conversation, keeping a high level of it's really breaking down the pieces that y'all can go out right now and do some research today, pick a dream and or goal or something you want to do this year. It doesn't have to be far in the future, but just do some research and figure out what the steps are so you can start actually aligning your daily life to where you want to go when you look at that life purpose statement, right? So, yeah.
It takes a lot of actual thought and actual lot of processes to get there. But that's where I feel like a lot of the hang up comes because we are storytellers and we all get caught up in the story. You know, there's always a negative aspect for the story because that's comfortable, that's easy. It's when you actually do the hard work and you start challenging yourself that this stuff gets difficult and those footsteps they become a little bit harder to put one foot in front of the other. And when you bring it back to the trail, with the weather starting to break now, you think about how many people just show up at a trail and really they're unprepared. And that's where the accidents happen. If you take the time to say, I want to go hike this trail, what am I going to need and have in my backpack, my shoes and my boots and this and that, you set yourself up for success. There's a lot less danger when you're more prepared. And that was something that I learned a lot at the beginning of this little journey that I've been on for the past 5 or 6 years, is it's okay to actually stop and put the noise aside for 5 to 10 minutes. Prepare yourself, sit with yourself a little bit, ask those hard questions and look for that wisdom within your heart because that's where the ink actually comes to write on those sticky notes that we're taping to the wall in this conversation. And that's where you start building that momentum and you get that plan together. And whether you're applying it in the outdoors or the concrete world, it all kind of coexists and works together. It's a metaphor, one for one side and the other follows it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But also, something you said in there kind of inspired me because it's this show up at the trail and just do it, or okay, we can break it up and we can figure out how to make a plan, but we still struggle. And that's where the third step of my method comes in, and it's so critical. It's execution habits. You can pick out that trail, know what you want to do. You can have a backpack full of all your supplies, but if you don't stop and take a break, or stop and eat lunch, or change out the shoes because something has happened, if you're doing a big backpacking overnight trip, then you've got all kinds of other things you're planning and executing. And what I mean there is it's about what you're doing. It's the habits of what you do after you make that plan, after you chose that trail, and after you get there, you got to actually do it. So you have created these big goals. You've done all of the awesome work of saying, okay, what are the things I need to do each year? What are the things I need to do each month? And maybe what's like my driving light for this quarter? And then check in. So execution habits, the third step of the summit method, is checking in, is what are you doing on the daily? So every 3 months, I ask people to kind of do a summit event again. That's what I call it. You sit down and you do your summit event. You make your life purpose statements, you write out this plan, then you check in, right? The reason New Year's resolutions don't work usually is because people are like, yeah, it's January. I'm going to be amazing. And then a couple weeks go by and it just kind of falls off because when you plan for a whole year, it's so natural for humans to say, I have a whole year to do that, or, endless time, just moving on. And I talk about how we actually need to break up check ins and force ourselves to see the data. That's where, you know, I am hiking. When I say see the data, it means look at your plan and see where you need to adjust. So you're hiking and you're realizing you're hungry or you're realizing you're getting a little fatigued. You stop and you drink some water and you kind of check in with yourself and see what do you need out of that backpack. It should be no different with your life planning and what you need to do. You've got this detailed plan. Every 3 months, you got to sit down and say, am I still doing this? Do I still care about this big goal? Do I want to change it? Did I complete the last 3 months of tasks and things that I said I was going to do? If yes, fantastic. Record it in an accomplishment tracker, give yourself that kind of praise of, you're doing great. If not, why? Sit down. Remember those mental tools that we set up? You have them for a reason. This is why. When you hit hurdles and you realize you're not making the progress you want to make, you need to actually figure out what are your barriers. Is there things in your life maybe you need to change or cut out because you're not giving yourself the time to do the thing you keep saying you really want to do, but you're not doing? Okay. Are you having to spend too much time in the kitchen cooking? Right? You're going to have to do some analysis and ask yourself, well, maybe for the next 3 months, I'm going to buy a meal service or something and figure out how to decrease time in the kitchen. I don't know. But the point is you probably never were going to sit down and think about that unless you looked at the data, right? You kind of saw, how has your progress been? And now how am I going to change that? The biggest thing people talk to me about, they're like, 5-year plan, like that seems really old school mentality. Who makes a 5-year plan anyway? That's so far in advance. I don't know what I'm doing next week. And I'm like, you're right. But the point of a 5-year plan, the point of giving yourself the time and space to develop these mental tools, long-term planning, is because you have to have, you know, a destination. You're in a road trip. You've got to be going somewhere. There's too many roads you can accidentally turn down and go the wrong way. So the point of a 5-year plan is to give yourself the space to dream and the space to look forward in life. And it is not rigid. It does not have to stay the same plan. So I actually recommend that every 3 months you take a look at that and you make sure, is your life still aligned? Where do you want to add? Where do you want to subtract? And how do you want to go? That's the execution habits. That's the focus on what you're trying to do. And remember those pieces of paper that we put on the wall for our life purpose statement? I even go and I put my big goals. What am I trying to do this quarter? I throw it on, throw it on your nightstand, throw it on the mirror in the bathroom, throw it on the door, wherever you're going to see it every day. That's the reminder, the little baby steps. How are we moving forward? How are we executing and creating these habits for success?
As I'm listening and I'm thinking about some of the work that I put out in the past, there was this article that I wrote about bear as a metaphor for trying to climb a mountain. With this whole conversation, I think about how so many people get stuck right there at the summit. And they always look up at the top of the mountain. They wonder what's up there. And when you take a 5-year plan and you put it together, you get the opportunity to look. And the main theme of the article was the fact that it's never about the tools of the trade that you didn't bring with you. You're able to build all these different things. And it gets back to the idea of bushcrafting when you're out in the field. You're out on a long hike and something goes wrong with, your shelter. So the next night you got to stop and you got to build something out of the environment that surrounds you. That's where this kind of perspective and this kind of practice, I think, becomes so important for somebody that's at the beginning of a new journey, because it takes away a little bit of that disempowering fear of the unknown, and it puts the power back in your hands because you're planning and you're preparing and you're strengthening yourself with each and every step that you're taking. With all those post-it notes that we've got on the wall, we're looking at and we're seeing our strengths that we have. But even more important than that is we're also putting our weaknesses on that wall. We're able to see those weaknesses and learn how to utilize them. whether we're strengthening them or changing the definition around whatever that specific bullet point may be, we're learning both sides of ourselves and still providing ourselves with the freedom to change the plan along the way.
Absolutely. I like your mention about, looking up and striving for that summit and in relation with the 5 year, because I also like to talk about how each summit is a different thing in life, right? You can have many goals for personal growth, financial, career, community. And it's when you get to the top of that summit, you get to the top of a mountain, you look out and you just see more mountains. Like you get to see more of life. When you choose to plan for the 5 years, you're letting yourself have the time and energy and insight to kind of see more of where you're going so that you can look back in life and feel more fulfilled, right? So that's another big thing is summit is not just one mountain. It's one of many, right? In any big hike. So, yeah.
And now it even brings to mind actually one of the very first mountains that I got to scale was along the Warrior Road, some of Daniel Boone's footsteps. And that actually came kind of out of the spur of the moment adventure. So as you build this plan out and you start putting the power in your hands, you got to also allow yourself some space for those kind of spur of the moment little trails that you're blazing along the way.
Absolutely. That's the beauty of life, right?
It's not intended to be all just hard work, is I
Yes.
think what we're really getting at here is as important it is as it is to put that power, or even to take another hunting analogy, is there's so many things that are not in your control that can affect the hunt and the experience, that it becomes so important to look at all the little details in order to put more things in your control or in your pocket to help success along the trip. And that's really what we're talking about in this conversation is crafting all those unknown things, taking bits and pieces of the environment and crafting tools that are going to help you not only maintain the trail, but also reach the success of that chapter of your life.
Yes. Exactly. I love it.
So, as we start to come toward the end of the conversation, though, take a minute to talk to somebody that may be throwing those sticky notes out there, not really sure what tools mentally and emotionally to be starting to grapple on, and help them sharpen those knives a little bit.
Yes. And if you need help with any of that, you're welcome to go check out my books. And I've got some courses online. If you're a video audio person, they have mountains on them too. I'm all about, you know, the analogies of climbing mountains, and outdoors is a very big part of what I like to, bring back to people. So, yes, I'm Aliki Samone.
Go ahead and do all that shameless plugging, how to get a hold of you, all that good stuff.
Yeah. If you want to connect with me, go to my website is conqueryoursummit.com. And honestly, I'm here on this show, here with you, Mike, to, help your audience and connect with your purpose and your mission. So thank you for having me. This is super great. And if anyone's looking to kind of get hands on and do some workshopping of what your life is, reach out to me. Otherwise, I hope you learned something today that you can take forward and, keep trying to chart your trail and get to your next mountain.
Most definitely. Thank you. This has been a blast. It's been a beautiful conversation. I look forward to getting together and doing it again sometime.
Absolutely. That sounds great.